This is my channel's weekly compendium, ending Monday, January 8th, 2024. Case file number 1417, written by Tippet17, The Birthday Candle Enigma. Before going to bed, I always fill a water bottle. I often get thirsty and will wake up to drink periodically throughout the night. My water bottle will sit on my bedside table. Usually, I will go through about a half bottle a night. One morning I awoke to the water bottle half empty with an additional surprise inside. A birthday candle had been put in the bottle, not one of the thin candles either. The candle was a number 6 and would require someone to remove the lid to put it into my bottle of water. I am a very light sleeper, and my room is on the other side of the house away from the kitchen where the candles would have been stored. Additionally, the candles are in a cupboard above the refrigerator, which would require anyone to get a stepladder to reach it. I'm 6'2" and still need a stepladder to reach this cupboard. My house has wood floors and creaks with each step. There is no possible way I could have slept, walked, gotten a step stool, removed the candle from the cupboard, replaced the step stool, slept, walked back to my room, unscrewed the top of my water bottle, plunked the candle in, and screwed the top back on, all without anyone else in the house waking. To this day, I don't know how the candle got there. Case file number 1418, written by Strange Technology 322. A very soapy mystery. So, I was driving down my road towards my house, and I saw my neighbor spraying the road in front of his house, which is right after mine. I didn't really think much of it, figured maybe he spilled something and was spraying off whatever he spilled. I pulled into my driveway. I usually walk in front of my car, jump on my porch, and open the door. But this time, I walk around the back of my car, and when I look up, my neighbor is now spraying his car that's now on the road where he was spraying before. I figured his girlfriend must have just pulled up right when I was pulling in, and that's why I didn't see her drive up. There was just a couple seconds from the time I parked to when I saw the car, so naturally I'm expecting to see the driver somewhere either in the car or walking out. But she never walks into view, so I start walking over there myself. In my gut, I had a feeling something wasn't right. It was like I knew that car didn't just pull up and was there the whole time. But it wasn't there, or I would have seen it, right? So I walked up to my neighbor and said, "This is a dumb question, but was your car here the whole time, or did it just pull up now?" He looks at me a little funny and says, "No, it's been here for the past 30 minutes I've been washing it." I tell him that when I pulled up, his car was not parked here. I said, "You were spraying the road. There was no car." Not wanting to sound any more crazy than I already did, I turned and walked away. I've known the guy my whole life, so he just laughs, not realizing I'm freaking out inside. My heart was racing like I just saw a ghost or something. I seem to experience this type of glitch pretty often, but it's always something small like my lighter or something on the counter that I could have overlooked. Although it's been getting more clear that things are gone one sec, then back the next. There's still a possibility I just didn't notice it. I never really know for sure. This time though, I know for absolute certainty that the car was 100% for sure not there. The road had a big circle of soapy bubbles, and he was spraying in the center as if there was a car there, but I just couldn't see it. The neighbors next to him have a big trailer parked on the road, and I remember I could see nothing but pavement from where I was all the way to that trailer. No car in between. I think deep down, we all know that the world we live in is just too amazing for us to have it all figured out, so experiencing something like this is just kinda confirms something I already knew. And even though this has happened, it's almost as if it never happened. I still have 1,000,001 questions. Bonus file, written by Chili Bronson. Flickering Memories of a Pup. When I was a kid, my brother and I were staying the night over at a friend's house. We would hook up all the game consoles in the basement so their parents wouldn't hear our ruckus. It was a little creepy down there. Lights were always dim, and they had several old family portraits and photos on the walls. There were 2 pictures over a daybed in particular that always gave us kids the heebie-jeebies. It was a large portrait of the great-grandmother and another photo of the grandma in Auschwitz. So one night, a neighboring friend had brought her new puppy over. We were all playing an Unreal tournament when the puppy began weeping and growling and weeping and so on. The pup, was staring at the portrait of their grandmother when all of a sudden the puppy flew off the bed a clean 5 feet. We all ran. Yes, we forgot the pup. Please forgive me. We were frightened children. And we sat in the living room contemplating whether or not we should wake the parents. We didn't. We told them the next day, and in typical movie fashion, the parents didn't believe us one bit. We didn't hear from our friend with the puppy at all the next day. She finally comes over a day later in the evening, crying hysterically, telling us her puppy had died. The vet said it appears the pup was crushed, and both the vet and parents wrote it off as a car hitting it, even though the pup was found in their fenced-off yard. Nearly 20 years later, and those memories still keep me up at night. A few other things happened at that house, but this was by far the scariest. Case file number 1419, written by Jeffrey, Gaming and Editing Across Timelines. So this is about experiencing a jump to a new timeline, presumably after experiencing a death in their previous timeline. The idea being that rather than dying and either blanking out of existence or experiencing some afterlife, people will simply jump to a parallel timeline, one that recently branched off from their existing timeline before some event that led to their death. Often this results in things being slightly but noticeably different, leading to confusion and causing speculation that they just jumped into a new timeline. I've always found this intriguing and fun to speculate on, but it does make me wonder what happens when one gets really old. But anyway, that's not what I'm writing about. I had an experience a few weeks ago in which I seem to have experienced this, but the other way around. I seem to have experienced another part of myself, a parallel timeline self, jumping into my life. One thing I do as a hobby is make videos of gaming experiences. Not just play video games, but cinematic videos using the gaming world as my construction set. This can be quite engaging. So, the other evening, I was taking a shower before bed, and as I was sitting in the shower, letting the water fall on my head, I was reminiscing about the gameplay and editing I had just done that evening. That was all normal, except that I suddenly realized that was not my memory. I had not done that gameplay or the editing that I had such a strong, vivid memory of. The realization of this made my head spin. I suddenly felt a sort of vertigo. I felt unanchored to my reality. I was not on drugs or drinking, and I haven't for a long time. It really slammed me hard. I wasn't sure what was real, but I knew that those weren't my memories. I got out of the shower, still feeling unsteady, and walked into the bedroom, and my wife started speaking to me, asking me a question. It was a bit of a struggle, but I was able to answer, and in doing so, it brought me back more solidly into the normal reality. As I laid down in bed, I felt the memory of, or should I say, the false memory, fade away. I could remember having the experience, but not any details of the memory anymore. It was like the memory of a dream will fade upon awakening. In speculating, I wondered if some part of me hadn't died that evening of a massive heart attack or something and then jumped into my timeline. It made me think that maybe I should take better care of myself, as I thought that while I'm okay, I just jumped timelines. But what of my wife and family in the other timeline, and the pain they must be suffering? Well, I hope you all find this interesting. It's a lot to think about. Bonus file, written by Bride of the Living Dead, When the Pillows Whisper. About a year ago, a woman wandered into the office I work for, but I'm rarely in because I work in the community. I had just happened to be there that afternoon to fax paperwork. She hands me a card and says she's a psychic massage therapist. I'm like, alrighty. She then is like, give me your hand and I'll show you how it works. So I give this random woman I've never met before my hand, and she starts to massage it, because why not? She then looks me in the face and says, stop taking your shoes off when you're driving. You're going to get in an accident. Also, your neck hurts because you shouldn't be sleeping with that many pillows. She bestowed me with some other weird tidbits about my habit of sitting on my left foot, and then she leaves a few cards in the office and pieces out. My coworkers that were in the office were standing there like, what the hell just happened? I was convinced one of them was messing with me. Now normally, I would write this all off as bullcrap, but I drive all day. Depending on the season, I either wear clogs or big muck boots that can easily be disinfected. I always take my shoes off because they slip on and off when I get in my truck because it's easier for me to drive that way all day. It's something I've never told anyone. It's always just been a weird habit. And also something I only do at work because I don't drive that much when I'm not working. I still have her card, but I haven't scheduled a psychic massage yet. Bonus file written by Lawler Munn in the silence of dawn. My mother, brother, and I all live with my very elderly, late-stage dementia grandpa. My mom was his caretaker and was certified, etc. But when my grandfather died, it was just me and my mom that still lived with him. I distinctly remember waking up at like 4:30 or 5 a.m. randomly, something I very rarely do. I also felt weird and felt sad, but I felt like a force leading my eyes towards the window. It felt familiar, like it was my grandpa, but I shrugged it off and went back to bed. I woke up a few hours later for school, and my mom came into my room and closed my door and told me that my grandfather had died that morning at the same time I had woken up. My grandpa, who loved us all, but was very old school, let me know he was leaving when he died, but also put me back to sleep so I didn't have to deal with his passing at that moment. Apparently, the ambulance, my uncle, and my mom were all there through the night. My mom and uncle grieving and my grandfather made sure I didn't see. I was in high school at the time. I've never been able to explain it. It's almost like I had a weird connection with death. A similar experience with my dad's passing happened just a couple years later. I visited my dad with my cousin. She wanted to come with her because my dad had been dealing with his shortcomings poorly, drinking himself into a stupor more often than not. When I visited him, I told him that after my first year of college, I was going to come back and visit him and that I wanted him to be there when I did. However, I knew he was going to die. So when I left his house, I texted my brother and told him exactly this. Hey, I don't think Dad is going to be around much longer. Come visit him. Which is out of character for me. My brother visited him that next morning, also out of character for him, and found him dead in his living room. He had died the previous night, no more than a few hours after I left his house. Plus, he texted my other brother, who was a few hours away at the time, and told him he left immediately to come home, and my mom told me that something was wrong with my dad and I knew he had died. Case file number 1420, written by Quail Plumes, Whispers of the Owl. When I was around 9 years old, my parents took me to a beautiful supper club in Wisconsin Dells for dinner one night. The supper club was originally built as a large cabin home in 1909. But the land was once a ceremonial ground for the Winnebago tribe before the pioneer settlers purchased it. The supper club has since been remodeled around the original architecture, and it is truly a visually stunning place. As a nature-loving kid, I was most intrigued by the many animal and bird mounts decorating the interior walls. The area where we ate that night had owls and hawks overlooking us. We had been sitting at our table for a little while, before I looked up at the nearest owl again and suddenly gasped, excitedly pointing it out to my parents and saying, "Look, the birds move!" I had watched this owl's head swivel at least 90 degrees from looking towards me to turning away in the other direction. But once my parents were staring at it, it stopped moving. They glanced at it for several minutes, clearly doubting it had moved at all. But I argued that it had entirely changed the position of its head from one direction to the other. To stop my relentless staring, they persuaded me to ask our waitress if the bird moved, the next time she came over, to which her reply was something like, "No, none of the birds move. They were all alive once, which is why they have been preserved so nicely." There was no further need for me to be convinced that the owl was not robotic, as it obviously looked like a real preserved bird, but I still did not doubt what I saw with my own eyes. I was only upset that it only moved while no one else was watching. I tried to laugh off the bizarre occurrence, like my parents who were now teasing me about the spooky owl, but to this day I remember watching the mounted owl swivel its head. Now a decade later, I've become a major bird lover with some of my most interesting experiences with birds being owls, so I like to believe what I saw that night was that good Hooter's spirit saying hello to me. Case file number 1421, written by Listerine 990. The Fireball, the Forest, and the Silent Strangers. When I was a kid, I saw a huge fireball in the sky through my roof light at night. I don't remember the time, but surely after midnight. There was no sound, which was strange. It looked so close and like a very big shooting star. I was confused and decided to go outside, live near a forest in a small town, and try to find where it landed or if there was any trace of it. I knew it could be an optical illusion, but it was very strange and I was sure I saw it for real. In the forest, I didn't smell smoke nor saw a fire, but there were a lot of people walking around either in small groups or some with their dogs. I greeted them, again, small town, and they greeted me back like it was the most normal thing to do to wander around in the forest after midnight. I get goosebumps years later thinking about that and can't explain the fireball nor the people. Another story. We have a smart TV from Sony. Maybe someone knows if this is normal. On a Saturday night, me and friends were watching Netflix, and I asked a friend to pause the movie. We have two remotes. The small one was on my side of the couch, and another bigger one with more buttons was where my friend was. He paused it, and suddenly a female voice started speaking. The movie was paused. The voice was much louder than the volume was set, and it was in English. TV settings are in German. She was reading down letters and numbers, and I was somehow shocked and didn't catch up with what she said. I tried to find out if there was a serial number of the TV or anything, but can't explain it. I wasn't able to find out which key or command it was on the remote, or what function was triggered there. This was very strange, but probably has an easy explanation. Bonus file written by a Mayrock, The Swimming Pool Prophecy. I was working alone in one of the dorms on campus. It was a summer break and the building was getting ready to be torn down. So I was just wrapping up cords for each desk in the dorms so they could be taken downstairs. I had my headphones on with an audiobook. Coworker had left for a moment. Then suddenly, I get this image of a person jumping or falling out of a window. I was thoroughly freaked out and messaged some friends to call me and talk. My campus is known for its hauntings, but I had never read about this specific building, so I talked to my friends. The image goes away and I forget about it. Fast forward 2 years and I'm at a different job, and my coworker just casually mentioned, "Oh yeah, there was that guy who jumped out of the window in that dorm," referring to the one I got that feeling in. I could just feel my face go white. I completely forgot that whole incident. So I looked up what she said, and sure enough there was someone who did jump off, similar to what I pictured. Another time this happened, actually before this previous incident, I was swimming in the gym and I got this image of a girl fully clothed and drowning. I freaked out and got out of the pool before deciding to call it a day. A couple of days later, I went back with a friend. We were swimming and I heard someone calling for help. There were 3 people in the pool and the lifeguard, everyone swimming. I jumped out and started crying. Someone actually did drown in that pool. The haunting stories involve this kid, but I distinctly remember it being a woman or a girl. I haven't been to another pool to swim laps since. Things that make this weirder. I don't believe in ghosts. For me, everything has an explanation. These instances have literally no explanation. Case file number 1422, written by Reiku 10126, The White Beasts on Loxahatchee Road. Years ago, me and my brother got ice cream from Carvel and were driving home when I made a wrong turn and ended up on this dark road with no streetlights and so much wood. We were driving when this large white creature thing ran across. My brother and I almost hit it, but something told me to keep driving and don't stop. I thought it was a dog or a fox or a panther, maybe an albino one, but it just didn't match the description. It did kind of look like an albino deer, but larger and scarier. We sped home, ice cream dripping from how hard we clinched it. I just remember this sense of dread. We both took long showers, and I spent time reading and listening to bhajans, religious Hindu music. I needed some to keep me calm, and that was it. There was just something so menacing about that event. I didn't get Carvel again for a while because I kept thinking of that night and that thing. I still am not sure what it was. It was in Parkland, Florida, on Loxahatchee Road. The road leads to the Everglades too. If anyone has any ideas, I would love to know. Case file number 1423, written by FLC Warings. Diabolical Doodles. So this was a couple years ago. I was 17 or so at the time. My mom, little sister, 14 then, and uncle all lived in a rented 4-bedroom house together. It was a really weird setup with additions that obviously happened at different times, because the front door was in the garage, so you had to go through this metal gate. My mom was very adamant about it always being locked, night and day, full house or not, and go through the garage to get to the front door. In the garage was a little room that was kind of a setup as a workshop but also perfect for storage, and my mom had a bunch of holiday decorations boxes we put in there. So, Halloween comes and we go in there to get the boxes, and I find a little leather notebook. It was nice, so I grabbed it because I really adore nice journals. After everything is decorated, I look at the journal, and it's mostly gibberish. A lot of scribbled out stuff I couldn't read. Very messy handwriting that did not match anyone in the house or anyone I could think of. I asked everyone if it was theirs, and they all confirmed it wasn't. Whatever, I liked it. It's mine now. On the bookshelf it goes. No creepiness yet. Christmas comes around, Mom's favorite holiday, so there are a million boxes we need to grab, and we go into the garage storage room. We're grabbing boxes, and in the middle of the 2 boxes is a piece of paper from the notebook, the one I found a few months before. Which is really weird, since it wasn't there when we moved in, or when we were putting the boxes away after Halloween. Also, the notebook has been in my room this whole time. The writing this time was a little more unsettling. It was written in a very childish handwriting. A lot was scribbled out, very rough, like enough to indent the paper, almost rip the paper through, and random words that once again were gibberish. This was a little freaky, but not freaky enough to get rid of the notebook, which hindsight could have caused some crap. I really liked it. It was pretty and fit well with my collection of notebooks. I didn't ever use it though, because spooky, I guess. We lived there for 2 years. Nothing big happens. We get some loud noises occasionally. Wasn't super old, but probably built in the 70s or 80s, so we figured it was just normal house noises. Things sometimes go missing. My sister and I get a sort of off vibe from the house, but my mom isn't a big believer in that stuff. She thinks it can maybe possibly kind of probably happen, just is very doubtful it will happen to her. Parents in a horror movie type, for sure. But anyway, nothing super scary happens for 2 years. Now we're moving out. I'm assigned to grab the holiday bins because apparently it makes sense to make the 5-foot child-sized girl grab heavy boxes. Oh well. I go in there and I'm moving boxes out of the room, no biggie. I moved 1 box and nailed, and I mean nailed. There wasn't drywall in there, just heavy, thick plywood, and it was in there with actual nails that you would have to hammer into the wall. So behind this box we have moved plenty of times and definitely would have seen before was a shirt with the front of it with quite a bit of blood on it. My blood to be exact, because of a bad nosebleed, which is extra weird because I've had maybe 6 or 7 in my life, but they were always very heavy. This also happened before we moved into this house, and I was pretty damn sure I threw away because 1, I remember doing it, and 2, why would I ever keep it? This scared me, I think rightfully so. So badly, I ran in the house and immediately told everyone I refused to finish the job. My sister also refused, and my uncle had to finish and take the shirt down, plus throw it away. My mom was even too freaked out to deal with it. And the thing is, I know it wasn't a prank. My mom is not at all like that. My sister isn't devious enough or tall enough, 4'10", and the shirt was about 6 feet up the wall, to accomplish that. And my uncle would for sure do something like that, but he is the type of person that he wants you to know once it's over that he accomplished that, and that he was the mastermind who pranked you, basically immediately. So, some 5 years later, I would definitely know about it. Plus, we didn't live with him at the time I threw the shirt away. It's still one of the creepiest things that has ever happened to me, and anytime my sister and I bring it up to my mom to discuss probable explanations, she dismisses it rather quickly and seems visibly rattled by it, which freaks me out more because she is not that type. It's still one of my favorite scary stories to tell because what the hell? Case file number 1424, written by Speaker 11. The quarter that slipped into another dimension. I was living with a few buddies while in college about a decade ago when we were all chilling in the living room on the couch playing Smash Bros. I mindlessly picked up a quarter from the coffee table and just sort of tossed it back on the table while waiting for my turn to play. The quarter hit the table and slid off the back, landing on the floor audibly with that signature wobbly coin hitting the floor sound. You know, the one where it's kind of spinning on its sides? So a few minutes later, I got up to go get something to drink, and on my way back, I went to pick up the quarter that fell on the floor, but it wasn't there. Not only was it not there, but not anywhere in the entire room. It couldn't have rolled anywhere, and there were no cracks, vents, or holes in our floor. Absolutely zero explanation for it falling off the coffee table and disappearing from reality. Since then, I've read several theories about the chances of objects just passing through other objects, but with incredibly insane odds that it would ever happen. If anyone knows what I'm referring to, feel free to remind me. So maybe it just ended up in my downstairs neighbor's apartment? No idea. Bonus file written by Cowtown Keener. The mystery of the flying paint cans. Okay, if someone could explain this one to me, it would be great. It's really weird. I was staying at this old 1930s house in a rural town with my dad and sister. There was an old stairway up into the attic with a door at the bottom. The attic was more like a bedroom, really, than the type of attic you see in most houses. I think they probably used it as a storage room. At the top of the stairs, as you entered the attic, there was a deep cupboard on the right-hand side with a door. The type of cupboard you could crawl up inside and hide in if you wanted to. So anyway, there was nothing up there except a bunch of old empty paint cans that were stacked in the cupboard with the door closed. The first night, when we were going to sleep, fairly late, around 11, we heard this crash from the attic. We went to check it out. The cupboard door had opened and the cans had all spilled out all the way down the stairs, which would have required them to turn a 90-degree corner, and all of them lay at the bottom of the stairs now. Weird, right? Anyway, we went back to bed, and the next day, my dad put the cans back in the cupboard and closed the door. The next night, around the same time, the same thing happened. Door opened, cans at the bottom of the stairs. This time it was really creepy, but my dad put them back again the next day, pushing them all the way to the back of the cupboard so they wouldn't fall out again. This night, instead of just the cans falling down, there was this loud crash from the attic. My dad ran up and I came up with him. The cupboard door had blown off its hinges, fragments were stuck in the ceiling, and most of the door lay across the room on the floor. It was the most terrifying scene I've ever witnessed. The cans were again at the bottom of the stairs. We looked in the cupboard to see what could cause it. There was nothing, just wooden walls, ceiling, and floor. We left everything as it was this time. It was just too freaky. The next night, nothing. Anyway, we left after that night. So far, my only theory is in the line of ghosts. Not very original, but I honestly have no clue. I'm a pretty handy guy too, and nothing about this made any sense to me. Bonus file written by Lily001, The Shed of Shadows. I remember that one night, it was nearing midnight and I was home alone. This happened when I was 18, waiting for my brother to come home. We lived out in the country with no neighbors, so I felt comfortable with the front door unlocked as I was chilling downstairs in the living room. Then, out of nowhere, I hear a loud crash coming from the bathroom to the left of the kitchen. I froze for a good 3 to 4 minutes and I was terrified. It sounded like someone had thrown a rock at the window in the bathroom, and our bathroom window was the only one that was a fully glass window, as all the other ones were plexiglass. Then after a while, I managed to calm myself down and figured that the shower rod had fallen as it had been happening for a while now. Before I walked to the bathroom, I locked the front door and then made my way to the bathroom. Nothing was out of order. No broken glass, no fallen rod, nothing at all. So I went upstairs and wondered if it was something upstairs that had fallen. I checked all the rooms and nothing looked like it had fallen. My brother's window was open, but it was the opposite direction that I had heard the sound from. I closed it and locked it just to be safe and went back downstairs. Then I reasoned that it might have been something behind the house in the shed. I called it a shed, but it was more like an old porch that had been fashioned into a shed. So like an idiot, I grabbed a kitchen knife and ventured outside behind our house. If this was a part of a horror movie, I'm sure I would have been killed. When I got back there, nothing looked out of place. The ladder hadn't fallen, nothing was knocked off from the shelves, nothing. So with my uneasiness growing, I ran back into the house and locked the door again, and messaged my brother to call me to open the door when he got home. I never found out what was behind that loud noise or why it happened. Question suivant 1417. The birthday candle Enigma. So I always have a can of Dr. Pepper by my recliner side before going to bed. Very important. Keep those caffeine molecules processing through the body throughout the night. I am hopped up, I suppose. But this does sound so random overall, doesn't it? Why a birthday candle of all possible things? I don't think it's a sleepwalking event, and you didn't mention it being your birthday, so I don't think it was related to a birthday event. If it was your birthday, I would say, yeah, it's more likely maybe someone in your home tried to prank you in that way. But this just seems so random. It's so random, but it's also so specific in where it appeared. So if it's just a DOP event, that's such a weird coincidence. Question suivante 1418. A very soapy mystery. The key detail is you saw the water go through where the car was supposed to be. This is more than quantum perspective, because in my opinion, in that case, the glitch would be reversed. You'd have seen your neighbor washing his car, parked, then look back and there would be no car being washed at all. That you saw the water pass through that same area means that objects aren't loaded as permanent objects and fixtures in the same way that we think they are, like they're loaded evenly for every single person, or rather they don't have to. It directly relates to individual perception. It can be loaded for one person, but not the other. Which is hard to even process, but that is revolutionary. That's the kind of knowledge that I don't even know what to do with that. Whoa. Question for the bonus file. Flickering memories. Okay, I don't think there are many evil spirits around, but there are some. And tossing a pup around and then crushing it? Yeah, that's just pure evil. Burn that place and put salt on it just in case. There's no recovery from that. And now time for the quote of the day. Politics is the art of looking for trouble, finding it, whether it exists or not, diagnosing it incorrectly, and applying the wrong remedy. Ernest Benn. Part of the problem with politics is, whatever your employment in government, to justify your own existence, you need to do work. And if your work is, say, regulating something, well, you're always going to regulate something new, even though if it doesn't need it or not. Or if you're a politician, you always have to pass new laws, where do we need more laws already? Maybe not. So it's the art of finding trouble because it's your job to, no matter if it exists or not, which is a very big problem in my view. Question suivant 1419. Gaming and editing across timelines. It's something I think about all the time. Have I died myself in some timeline and then coalesced with the other copies of me that exist in all the realms? Actually, by the sheer magnitude of copies that must exist, because there's so many alternate universes, I think we all have at least a few times. But that sorrow that must be experienced by our loved ones in those universes where we did die, that haven't even the faintest clue about quantum immortality, it's just so sad to dwell on that, isn't it? As far as the transition and fusion process, I think it's similar to in the movie The One with Jet Li. Mine is gaining superhuman speed and strength, that's fictional. I think it's just informational fusion. You don't gain extra abilities, but if one copy dies somewhere, then its life experiences and memories transfer and fuse together with all the other copies of you that exist everywhere else. It's just copy and pasted to all those other universes, and it happens pretty quickly. But sometimes I think if you're conscious at that moment when it happens, things can get jumbled up in your head. Memories you don't actually remember having, now you suddenly remember. Or maybe you misremember a memory, you remember it differently than it was. Maybe that's often why we misremember things in the past. It's not that our brains damage the memories by thinking of them, but that they physically get rewired when a death of ours occurs in a different universe. And then that information is written into our brains physically. So people with really crystal clear long-term memory then are people who rarely die in any universes at all. But people who misremember all the time, they're dying all the time. Kind of a gloomy thought, I suppose. But this is just speculation. Maybe it's not how it works, but it makes some sense if it was the case. Definitely makes you think either way. Case notes for the bonus file. When the pillows whisper. If someone knows a detail of your life that is hyper-specific, and that you've never told anyone and no one has ever seen happen, well, it can't possibly be a prank or of the natural world, unless this random fake psychic works for the NSA or something and is observing you through hidden cameras built into the frame of your truck. Something along those lines of improbability. Let's just say the odds of that are low. The truth is, there are a lot of fake psychics, mentalists, and so on out there. It's a lucrative scam, so unscrupulous people do it. But there are real ones too, usually the ones that don't charge money or at least charge very little. But always beware, it's probably more likely that you'll encounter a fake one than a real one, just randomly going about your day. Case notes for the bonus file. In the silence of dawn. So when you pass, how do you want others to remember you and to feel in general? There is an unavoidable melancholy that would overcome your passing if you were loved. You can't shake that away as it's part of the human experience. Change is never easy, especially when it's leaving something behind forever, something that you loved. But that said, I think we'd all want our loved ones who remain to embrace the life they still have. And of course, this is without contemplating quantum immortality at all. But, it makes me wonder if I did die. Again, outside of quantum immortality, let's just say this is the one universe. Well, I would want my funeral to be a happy place, like serve actually delicious food, for instance. That would be a good step. Play some funny music, something to lighten the mood. I guess it's hard for people to do that, but if it's what the person who died would want, I don't know. Leave it in the will if they check that before the funeral. And now time for the quote of the day. The more I learn, the more I realize how much I don't know. Isaac Newton. And boy, this is a statement from probably the smartest human being to have ever lived. The dude literally invented a new form of mathematics on a dare over summer. That's insane. Most people struggle to even understand the math that's already been established and invented or discovered, however you want to frame it. Imagine just coming up with it on your own, just like that. That should be impossible, basically, but no. Some people were that smart. It's unprocessable. But when someone even that smart understands, and often this is the case, there's a Dunning-Kruger effect where if you're not that smart, you tend to think that you know a lot more than you do, or that you're more competent than you are. But the more smart you are, the more you realize, I know basically nothing at all. The smartest person to have ever lived is still ignorant of like 99.999 to 20 digits % of all the knowledge that there is and could be. And that's not even counting the knowledge we don't even know exists yet. So yeah, if you ever feel dumb, don't worry. We're all basically dumb relative to the abundance of what is out there. Still try to gain more knowledge. It's very useful. It benefits ourselves and other people too. So thirst for knowledge. Just understand that, really, you can't know it all. And that's okay. Case notes of file 1420. Whispers of the Owl. Absolutely. Spirits can possess objects and animate them, and I think most animals have spirits too. But this is still incredibly odd to me because turning the head like that and back should damage the preserved owl. Even if it was absorbed by some spiritual energy, it doesn't mean a rigid object can be deformed against the laws of physics and not break or be damaged. Maybe it was a spiritual interfacing event instead, so the owl's spirit jacked into your mind to make you see something that never happened in reality. Because again, I still think, even if an object is possessed, it can't do things that the laws of physics would prevent. If it breaches its tensile strength or something, it'll just rip apart along those lines. Case notes of file 1421. The Fireball, the Forest, and the Silent Strangers. The first story almost sounds like a lucid dreamlike state, with some sensory perception missing. Like sound, or simple cues like asking why half the people you knew were walking around the forest alone at midnight. It is very odd and unsettling, but my guess is it wasn't actually happening. The fireball or the meteor maybe did pass, and you were just dreaming it. pulling that information into your mind, and as you were sleeping, your subconscious was processing it, which is kind of cool in a way, I think. Case notes for the bonus file. The swimming pool prophecy. Yes, repeating patterns, echoes. It's funny how our fiction and games often recreate certain elements of reality, accidentally. I'm thinking of in Dark Souls, the video game, where there are pools of blood near the point where someone dies, and if you click on it, it presents the faded recreation of how that player died. Of course, it's not accessible to most people. We don't walk around with bloodstains where people died and we can just press it and then see how they died, no. But some people do possess the ability to pull into that spiritual knowledge bank without them knowing why or how it activates. And then they recreate the whole, and sight, smells, sounds, everything, event in their mind. And they see exactly what happened. It's not just some echo for them. It's really happening. They're there. It's more like in Harry Potter with the pensieve. Diving into a memory and really being there, even though you can't affect anything. I think that's pretty cool, but if you don't know or understand what's happening, it would be very disturbing. And now time for the quote of the day. Hard work spotlights the character of people. Some turn up their sleeves, some turn up their noses, and some don't turn up at all. Sam Ewing. I've been hearing about this lately, where, especially in blue-collar work, like physical, manual, hard labor, a lot of people just aren't showing up for work anymore. It makes you wonder. Obviously there's pay issues, it's hard work, you want to be paid really well. And you think about it, if you can manage to work in some other capacity at a desk on a computer, it's much more comfortable, there's no denying that. Although some people do enjoy working with their hands, it feels more direct, I suppose. But yeah, a lot of people just aren't showing up anymore. And I think that's, if you don't want to work, just don't work. But don't make an agreement to show up and then just not show up. That's kind of crappy, Honor your word. That'd be the advice I'd give to people. Simple as that. Just, if you make an agreement, honor it. Or do everything you possibly can to honor it. Obviously, if you get, ejected from a plane or something, you can't go there. But within reason, honor your word. That's all. Case notes of file 1422. The White Beasts on Loxahatchee Road. So there are innumerable beasts out there that we haven't discovered yet. But I believe it's multiverse related. We'll often see beasts, creatures that don't exist in our universe, but for a flash in our perception. Through the looking glass, you'll never know what you find. And the curious thing is, the looking glass is everywhere, but only at specific times. Case notes for file 1423. Diabolical Doodles. The notebook I think is embedded with a spirit. Nothing else could have pulled that bloodied shirt to you, and there'd be no reason to do so unless the intent was to freak you out, terrorize you. Mission accomplished. And also, your uncle was a proper prankster. Indeed, the whole point is the payoff. The reaction and the realization that you're the one that created that momentary burst of adrenaline and confusion in their life. It's just fun. Without that payoff, there's no point to the prank. And now time for the quote of the day. After 12 years of therapy, my psychiatrist said something that brought tears to my eyes. He said, "No hablo English." Ronnie shakes. Yes, I think if you're going to a therapist and you discover after 12 years that they don't speak your language, there's a problem there. I think though the joke is that therapists often just listen, which can be very good and therapeutic in of itself, in just talking to someone. Of course, I think they do more than that, but I've never been to therapy myself, so I think it probably has a lot of use, but it just depends on what you're looking to gain from it. You have to know why you want to go, I think is the core point of it. Case notes of file 1424. The quarter that slipped into another dimension. What you referred to is the physical process called quantum tunneling. It's how fusion works in the hot plasma of the sun. In effect, atoms don't exist as precise points in space, but rather as clouds of probability. If you apply enough heat and pressure in a given area, then the odds that the probability waves of atoms will overlap increases. However, this should almost never happen outside of very hot and pressurized environments. It's the whole conundrum with trying to get fusion to work here on Earth. We just don't have enough pressure. We can get a lot of heat though, and that's the only way we can do it. So it's more likely it's a classic DOP event for this coin. The coin didn't phase through the floor, no. It just ported into a different universe, which I think is even more incredible. Case notes for the bonus file. The mystery of the flying paint cans. So I've been thinking lately that I think the world as a spirit sees it is likely different or blurry than as we perceive it. Faded out. So those paint cans may not even be what they are to us. in their perspective. Also, there's a certain energy you can feel when you're around, I guess you could say evil, or maybe rather unsettled or unstable spirits, or even human beings. You can feel the aura that emanates from them when you're around them, and you know to get out. You don't test the waters in some circumstances, but we do innately know it. Case notes for the bonus file, The Shed of Shadows. Okay, this is interesting because something relatively similar happened to me when I was a teenager. I was home alone, my mom was out working, and it was maybe 7 p.m., but it was already dark outside. The door from outside to inside was really close to the living room area, like a few feet. I could see it from the couch. I was watching a show, and I heard a massive crash or bang on the door. I felt it vibrate the air. Immediately went to look at the peephole, but I saw nothing. I hadn't thought of this in over a decade until now. It's very interesting. It's a phantom noise with no source. Now time for the quote of the day. In 3 words, I can sum up everything I've learned about life. It goes on. Robert Frost. Life sure does go on, and it always finds a way. The good thing about that, of course, is that we persist. And even though if we might die or get transposed to a different universe, whatever it may be, I think the essence of who we are remains. Even after that final death, life goes on because it's a repeating pattern, and maybe even encoded deliberately from a simulation. It's interesting to ponder on what comes after life, but maybe that's not even the right move. Maybe it's just about enjoying the life we do know we have right now. So I'll keep pondering on the future and what lies beyond everything, but make sure you enjoy the gift that you have now, because for certain you do have it. Like the video, subscribe, hit the bell. Kinetic Symphony signing off.